There are many reasons that dragons are never going to fade from this world, and it's not just their immense power. That's not understating their immense power, by the way. They are absolutely terrifying in many regards, but the main reason they will never fade is the main reason everything is still alive today. Adaptability. They can be found at any corner of the world, just like everyone else. If you are pushed to the extreme, you will run to any corner of the map that will keep you there, and survive, when you eventually make it to the top of the food chain there. But where dragons are quite interesting is that they mold into their environment in such a bizarre way, to the point where they even start to expand the environment they live in, both magically and naturally. But one dragon dwells in a domain so large and massive that it would be impossible for even the most powerful of near godlike beings to expand it. And we know this because many have tried time and time again. This land is so hostile and filled with hatred and monsters that the dragons of this land are actually not even close to the top of the food chain, but just another monster to add to the list. The land I speak of is of course the dreaded Underdark, the land deep underground filled with myth and legend. Just living within this land for but a short while will corrupt and change you, to the point where everything that dwells there is considered a different race entirely to its land-dwelling counterparts. It is even said that you can reach the abyss through the very bottom of it, the home of demons. But today's tale is not about that. Today's tale is about the dragon that dwells in the Underdark. The Deep Dragons. A breed of dragons that are the distant cousins to the chromatic dragons that we know. And they behave much like them in almost every regard, attacking and destroying any settlement they can, while enslaving and commanding those of the land wherever they can spread their authority. But something I find quite interesting about them is where they place themselves in the land. Like I said before, they're not actually at the top of the food chain, and this drastically changes how they interact with the world around them. For an example, imagine if you will for a moment, there is a blue dragon within the desert that owns a small kingdom, but their neighbour, who is the same race as the people that they have enslaved, could wipe out the dragon very easily if they put all of their efforts to it. It makes the dragon rethink a few things, approach that nearby kingdom with the idea of trade and working with them, while still holding themselves in high regard with power and authority. And this is the dynamic that deep dragons tend to have with the likes of the drow. They work with each other, while still both thinking that they are better than the other, and only maintain their relationship due to fear. It's not uncommon for deep dragons to use them whenever they can. Most of them even keep drow slaves, and it's probably the drow that gave them those slaves in the first place. They'd rather lose a bunch of useless slaves than just as many fighters dealing with the dragon. They have a very similar relationship with all of the races of the Underdark, attacking each other to gain power, then carefully trading once they have no other choice for expansion. A lot of the monstrous type people that live down there have a similar sort of interaction, and view the deep dragons as just another neighbour. They must always be careful not to look weak around their neighbours. But there are some bizarre scenarios where you might buff up a neighbour in order to make the other one a little bit weaker. Then with your combined mights, you'd attack that neighbour and swarm over them to take their stuff. Then the two former allies will immediately attack each other to swarm all of their stuff. While doing so, they both look weak for a third party to come in. Then, that third party that's been around for quite a while now completely shatters, making everything independent again. It is a very unstable and monstrous relationship that deep dragons take a huge part in. But because deep dragons are a lot more willing to deal with their neighbours in this regard, it results in them acting more like a tiny nation in their own right, with the dragon as their de facto ruler. This does happen time to time again on the surface. Like I said before, blue dragons can do this every now and again, but in practice this is a lot rarer with every dragon besides the deep ones. And deeps do this so common that they go to the point of signing non-aggression pacts in paper. I'd also like to note that they are actually surprisingly skilled at polymorphing too, to the point where they're on par with a lot of metallic dragons. This helps them do that a lot. Right, onto some topics I don't usually talk about. I'd like to talk about the dragon's diet, as it's something of note because it actually affects their biology. See, they will eat almost everything, like most dragons, but they have a favourite food which they eat all the time. And theirs is fungus. The most toxic and deadly, the better. They cannot get enough of it, not just for the taste, which I imagine is absolutely horrid, but that it actually gives them power. See, somehow they are able to gain nutrients from the plants while keeping them alive, and even growing them parasitically within their own body. This is something that deep dragons instinctually know that they are able to do. I suspect they might even have an organ or even several that exist to do just that, to maintain and grow these fungi within their bodies. And they do it for all two purposes: to continue to feed and nourish them, obviously, but also to be used as weapons. The main reason they love the most toxic and poisonous ones is because they can release them again in many forms, mostly as spores and gases. In fact, their own breath weapon is one of these spore attacks. It's known as a nightmare breath, and it's a cloud of dark reddish spores that force the victim to hallucinate their worst fears and nightmares. If you can power through it for a moment, you can truly see the world for what it is, with a sort of shadowy figures in the corner of your eye. But there is little to help you against the pain of the poisons that seep into your very bloodstream. They are truly a horrid breed of dragon, if you ask me, but rarely for the reasons you would expect. While, yes, they commonly perform acts like torture and murder, like most dragons are wont to do, the lengths that they take it to can just be gross. Too much for me to describe if I'm being brutally honest for you. They seem to be the dragon embodiment of sleazy behaviour, and this is an opinion that seems to be shared by other dragons too. Most simply do not like them and find them creepy. They're the dragon equivalent of the awkward uncle who says weird things at social gatherings and completely ruins the atmosphere while rubbing their greasy claws together. Even the likes of red dragons see deep dragons as just the worst, and might I remind you, reds are racial supremacists who think anything that is not them should be extinct. And to be fair, at least the reds will just kill you and take your stuff. You do not want to be taken alive by a deep dragon. Like the drow that are their neighbours, they are horrid slavers and torturers that have a bizarre fascination with their own spores and poisons. And sadly, the tale I have of a deep dragon involves how they abduct their victims. But bear with me for this one, for it is a happy story with a good ending. See, my tale is not actually my own, but my sister's, Iona Stoneheart. She is a teacher at a magical academy, specializing in spellology, that is the creation of new spells, which she excels in. Now, the dragon part of this tale begins with the academy she worked at being attacked by a roving gang of drow slavers, being led by a young deep dragon. To make matters worse still, her young daughter was paying her a visit at the time and was also sadly taken by the warband, and she was not going to stand by and accept this fate. While all the other teachers were being told to wait till the proper authorities were to arrive, she quickly grabbed as much magical equipment as she could, a staff, a wand, several scrolls and potions, and ran right after the warband alone. She was following them and tracking them through the Underdark for 3 days, keeping out of sight with the aid of potions of invisibility. And, with the aid of a potion of stone giant strength, she started picking off members of the warband one after the other, making sure that she only went for the ones that strayed too far from the group, making her presence remaining hidden. Eventually, the deep dragon made their presence known, a beast by the name of Carvanis the Fugal. Iona feared she could not stop them alone, and just as this thought was dawning on her, the deep dragon noticed her presence and ordered the warband to chase after her. Darting through the tunnels of the hallways of the Underdark, she managed to cut off half the warband in an instant, sealing them off with a well-placed use of the spell Move Earth, destroying the hallway and probably killing several of them in the process. The dragon, wanting to end her quickly, utilized its myriad of spore attacks, but she countered quickly, revealing a scroll with the spell Control Winds to shoot the gas back at the other members of the warband, killing them all instantly in the process. It was just her and Carvanis next, and the dragon realized this, so fled back to the captors to grab a couple of hostages quick as you could. And unfortunately, one of the 4 he grabbed within his foul claws was her young daughter. He threatened to eat her once he saw the teacher's reaction, and she surrendered to save her child's life. But once the dragon reached forward to eat her anyway, she quickly pulled out one of her last scrolls and cast the spell Blight as powerfully as one possibly could. The spell shot just past the child and hit the dragon right in the neck, causing a hole to rip through the fungus-riddled throat of the dragon, the tissue around it dying and withering as its body started to shrink and fade. But Iona did not care, for she had her daughter in her arms again, promising to never let go. She took the children back to the surface and got everyone back to safety before the guards had even made a report. Most view her as a hero for this, and rightly so. Everyone is so proud of my sister for this accomplishment. You know, it's actually been a while since I've seen her, actually. She's one of the few members of my family I actually tolerate. Perhaps I should stop by the academy and pay her a visit sometime. Maybe give a lecture to the young students while I'm there, who knows. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.